everyone. I hope you had a great first week with doing your writing last. This week we are starting Unit 10, which is all about solutions. So this is going to be your first page of notes for Unit 10. So we're talking about water in chemical and biological systems. So there's a lot of information on this slide. I'm going to kind of read through it for you really fast. Water is the main constituent of all organisms. Jellyfish are made up of 98% water, and humans consist of about 65% water. It's essential to the diffusion of materials across surfaces such as the lungs. Oxygen is dissolved into the moisture, and this aids it with passive transport across cell boundaries. So a little bit of biology coming into play. It is used to help maintain the body's constant temperature. When the body needs to cool down, evaporation of water is used to cool the body down. So we start sweating, right? This is because to evaporate the water removes heat from the body. Water's properties, especially viscosity, makes it a useful lubricant. Water-based lubricating fluids include mucus, synovial fluid, pleural fluid, and pericardial fluid. So mucus is used to externally aid movement in animals such as snails. So if you've ever touched a snail, they're super slimy and mucusy. Mucus is also on the internally on the gut wall, to aid the movement of food as you digest. Synovial fluid, that is the lubrication between your joints that helps you move and not be in pain while your joints are moving. Pleural fluid, that's what is helping your lungs, and your lungs should be coated in this fluid to help you breathe. Pericardial fluid, that's going to be around your heart. In chemical systems, we already know that water can be in three phases: solid, liquid, or gas. The continuous movement between all three phases, solid, liquid, and gas, that is the water cycle. The water molecule, some things you need to know about water itself. It's a covalent bond. So if you think back to when we talked about bonds, covalent means it's two nonmetals. Oxygen's a nonmetal, hydrogen's a nonmetal. So that means electrons are going to be shared between the oxygens and the hydrogens. Because of this unequal sharing, that means that oxygen will sometimes have a partial charge and hydrogen will sometimes have a partial charge. Because there's partial charges, it's called a polar molecule. That's a new vocab word for you, polar molecule. If you look at the symbol in the bottom right corner, the weird S looking thing, that's showing your partial charges. So it's showing oxygen is partially negative, hydrogen is partially positive. Water has a bit shape, so because it's bent, it gives water a lot of unique properties. Okay, here's a chart for you to look at. It's comparing polar and non-polar molecules. So polar, it's going to have unequal sharing of electrons. In general, we can say that likes dissolves likes. So water's polar, it's going to dissolve other things that are also polar, that are like it. Water will also dissolve ionic compounds. Remember that ionic is a metal and a nonmetal bonded together. An example would be water or hydrochloric acid, HCl. Nonpolar, the electrons are shared by the adjacent atoms in the bonds, but they're shared equally. There's no unequal sharing. These are very strong bonds. Those are going to come into play a lot in biology, especially with peptide bonds or chains of amino acids that are found in our DNA. Some other properties of water. It has cohesion, so it's the ability to self-attract. When you spill water on the floor, it kind of beads together. There's a lot of surface tension. That's why some insects can walk on water. Water also exists in three phases: solid, liquid, and gas. Ice is going to be less dense than the liquid, and the liquid is more dense than the gas. Density is why ice can float on water. So we talked about that a long time ago at the beginning of the year. This is just kind of getting back to that. Also, water has evaporated cooling, so human sweat keeps us cool in the summer. Transpiration is basically it's kind of similar to how humans sweat, but it's in plants. It's transport of nutrients, and it's a cooling mechanism. Okay, here is a new vocab word, solutions. Solutions we're going to talk about in a little bit, but first you need to know what is a solute. A solute is a substance being dissolved to make a solution. So the solute is what is being dissolved. An example would be sugar. The solvent is whatever the solute is being dissolved in to make the solution. So if I have tea, that can be my solvent, sugar can be my solute, and when I mix them together, I have sweet tea as my solution. The universal solvent, or the universal thing that's usually something's being dissolved in it, it would be water. A solution is a homogeneous mixture because it is the same throughout. Homo means same, so a solution is going to look the same throughout the entire mixture. You can't see little differences in it. A few more definitions. Concentration is the abundance of a component divided by the total volume of a mixture. If something is really concentrated, that means it's going to be really strong. So think about Kool-Aid. When you add your sugar to Kool-Aid, the more sugar you add, the more concentrated it's going to be, the sweeter it's going to be. Dilution is the process of reducing the concentration of a solute in solution, usually by mixing more solvent. So usually adding water. Think back to the Kool-Aid. If I want to dilute my Kool-Aid, I'm going to add more water or more solvent. Solubility, this is a new word for you. This is how much solute can be dissolved in a solvent. The solubility of sodium acetate is 46.4 grams divided by 100 milliliters of water at 20 degrees Celsius. So that you don't really need to know how to do any math on this right now. You just need to know that how much solute can be dissolved in a solvent would be solubility. We have a few more vocab. So I have an unsaturated solution. It has solute in it, but it's not the full amount that it's capable of dissolving. So if I'm thinking about Kool-Aid, I have some sugar in it and it's completely dissolved, but I could still add more sugar and it would keep dissolving. Saturated solution has as much solute as the solvent is able to dissolve. So when you're adding sugar to Kool-Aid, there's a point when the sugar stops being able to dissolve. So when you hit that point, it's called saturated. Supersaturated has more solute than the solvent is capable of dissolving. Usually supersaturated solutions, you're going to have to heat that mixture up to get everything to dissolve. So you can supersaturate by adding heat. Okay, electrolytes. Most of you guys know what an electrolyte is. It's a chemical compound that ionizes when dissolved or molten to produce an electrically conductive medium. So a lot of people think of energy drinks, Gatorade, Powerade, things like that replace electrolytes in your body. Strong electrolytes can either be strong acids, strong bases, or salts. Salts would be like sodium chloride, those type of things. And you can also have weak electrolytes, which is just going to be weak acids and weak bases. So we will talk about that a little more coming up in the next few slides, and then in the next slideshow that I do as well. A strong electrolyte produces ions, and it can conduct an electric current. It dissociates in water, producing positive and negative ions. So dissociate means that it kind of separates, okay? It has negative ions floating around, and it has positive ions floating around. They're not together. If you were to test an electrolyte and set up a light bulb to it, the light bulb would glow really, really bright. A weak electrolyte produces very few ions. It still conducts a little bit of an electric current, just not as strong as the strong electrolyte. This dissociates in water only a very small amount. If you hooked it up to a light bulb, it would just glow pretty faintly, A non-electrolyte dissolves as molecules in water. It doesn't produce ions, so nothing's going to get split apart. And it does not conduct an electric current, so the light bulb would not glow at all. Okay, so let's look at this picture really quickly. If you look at the strong electrolyte, it looks like it's salt, right? Na plus Cl. So those NaCl compounds, those get split up in your electrolyte, and you have positives going off to one side and you have negatives going off to the other side. That makes it really strong, okay? The weak electrolyte, you have a lot of positives going to one side and a lot of negatives going to the other side, but you still have compounds that are together, that are not getting split apart. So those would be the HF that's combined. My non-electrolyte, an example would be sugar. Those sugar molecules are staying together. No carbons are breaking off, no hydrogens are breaking off, everything's just staying as a sugar molecule. Okay, so that is it on this slideshow. I hope you guys enjoyed and wrote down your notes as we went along, or typed out your notes. Be looking for the next video pretty soon.